Hi there, I'm Darlene. Ever been erased from your own family's story? Mine told a lie big enough to keep me from Thanksgiving dinner and replaced me in the photo without a word. But the silence wasn't the worst part. It was the years of quiet betrayal, the forged signatures, the screaming in public, all while I kept paying her tuition. Why would a family do that to one of their own? Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own bloodline? When was the last time someone you loved made you question your worth? And what time are you listening to this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I'd really love to know. The streetlights flickered on as I drove through downtown Savannah, their soft glow spilling over the golden leaves scattered across the sidewalk. I had picked up a bottle of wine on my way home, cradling it in the passenger seat like a promise. Thanksgiving was always my favorite, full of warmth, chaos, and familiarity. For years, it was the only time we were all in one place. No masks, no secrets. Or so I believed. My phone buzzed just as I pulled into the driveway. It was Mom. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, her voice thin. "Can you talk?" I smiled. "Of course. Just got home." There was a pause, just long enough to feel off. "We've been talking," she began. "And, well, with Mason's parents coming this year, we need everything to look polished." I blinked, gripping the wheel tighter. "Polished?" It might be best if you sat this year out." My throat tightened. "You mean, don't come?" "It's not personal," she said quickly. "It's just, things are delicate with Morgan and her fiancé. His family expects a certain image." "Right," I said, "and I'm not part of that image." "I didn't say that." "No, you didn't have to." I hung up without another word. The wine bottle stayed untouched on the kitchen counter as I stared into the quiet room. I hadn't decorated yet. Didn't feel like it now. I sat down on the edge of the couch, watching the lights outside blur against the window, my chest rising and falling with a silence that weighed too much. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just emptied. 16 years ago, I skipped college to help Mom with the store when Dad left. When Morgan got accepted into Columbia, I sold my car to cover her deposit. No one asked me to. No one thanked me either. There were signs, subtle slights wrapped in politeness. The time Mom asked me to wear something less loud to Morgan's scholarship dinner. The moment I realized I was the only one not tagged in the family Christmas post. I had mistaken endurance for belonging. Later that night, my fingers hovered over my phone. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. A new photo. Mom, Morgan, Mason, even my brother, smiling at the dinner table, plates full, candles lit. The caption, "Grateful for what matters most." I zoomed in. There, in my seat, sat a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, polished, wearing pearls. Her hand rested gently on Mason's arm. They hadn't just uninvited me. They replaced me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared until the screen dimmed. If I disappeared tomorrow, would they update their family photo or just crop me out like clutter? I walked into the kitchen, placed the bottle beside the sink, unopened. My eyes fell to a white envelope on the counter. Morgan's tuition invoice. Due in 14 days. And underneath it, a smaller envelope I hadn't noticed before. No return address. My name in neat handwriting that wasn't familiar. Still sealed, I didn't open it. Not yet. The morning light in Savannah seeped in through the blinds, streaking my living room with pale slivers of gold. I hadn't slept. My phone rested by my side like a wound I couldn't stop touching. I picked it up again, scrolling with no destination. Just movement to quiet the stillness. Then I saw it. Tagged. Public. Mom, smiling wide in her navy blue sweater. The one I bought her last Christmas. Morgan, radiant in a cream silk blouse, her makeup flawless, dimples deeper than I remembered. Masons. Parents sat beside them, proper and polished. The caption, "Thankful for those who always show up." I looked closer. My chair, the one I'd sat in every Thanksgiving since I was 9, wasn't empty. A stranger had taken my place. Not forgotten. Deleted. The wine bottle from the night before stood untouched, the seal intact like a dare I hadn't answered. Thumb hovered over the photo, then pressed it wider. The woman's hand rested casually on Morgan's shoulder, her smile so perfectly in place it looked rehearsed. My stomach turned. A ping. "Why didn't you post your pie this year?" It was Denise from work. I always posted a photo of my homemade pecan pie. Every year, it had become a thing. Another ping. "Just saw your family photo. You look great." From an old high school friend I barely spoke to. I typed, "I wasn't there." Deleted. It typed, "They uninvited me." Deleted that too. I finally replied with a heart emoji. No one needed the truth today. No one wanted it. The silence after was worse than the words. I stood up, walked to the window, then back to the kitchen. Restless. I opened the fridge, closed it. No appetite. 16 years ago, I worked double shifts to cover Morgan's dorm bedding. When she forgot her laptop before midterms, I drove 5 hours to bring it to her. I skipped my birthday to pay her phone bill. No one ever told me to. No one stopped me either. When did helping become expectation? When did love turn into currency? I'd been reliable, dependable, the family mule. Now I was irrelevant. I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out my old yearbook. There she was. Morgan, in her cap and gown, the day I stood in the back with a bouquet I couldn't afford. The smile I wore that day cracked a little more in memory. I shut the book. A new email pinged. Tuition invoice, final reminder. This time I didn't look away. The envelope was thin, unassuming. It landed on my welcome mat like a stray leaf, its corner caught under my boot when I stepped in. The return address was familiar. Morgan's University. I hadn't opened anything from them since the last tuition invoice, but this one felt different. Inside was a formal notice about an adjustment to Morgan's financial aid. It read smoothly, too smoothly. I scanned it until I stopped cold. My name, my signature, scribbled at the bottom in a hurried loop. But I hadn't signed a thing. My mouth went dry. I pulled out my folder from the bottom drawer, the one where I kept every tuition bill, every letter I had signed since she was 18. My hands moved on their own, paper flipping, eyes scanning, and there it was. Another form, months ago, with the same forged curve of my name. The sickening realization crawled up my spine like ice water. Morgan had been using my identity. Not just for help, not just for backup, but to manufacture a clean financial profile, to secure more money, more leverage. She knew. She knew exactly how far my trust stretched, and she knew I wouldn't question her. I never had. 16 years ago, she cried in the back seat when she thought she'd failed her algebra final. I'd written a letter to her teacher, begged for a retest. She passed. She smiled. Said I was her hero. That was the first time I'd spoken on her behalf. And now she'd taken my voice and made it her own. I needed air. I stepped outside, stood on the porch while the wind danced through brittle branches. Then I made a mistake. I searched her name on the alumni network. It didn't take long. A post, casual but carefully curated. Morgan introducing herself to her fellow scholars. Raised in a politically active home. Daughter of a federal attorney, shaped by Capitol Hill, values and long-standing legal tradition. My heart didn't break. It snapped. She hadn't just borrowed my name. She'd stolen my story. She'd stepped into my skin and left me hanging outside it like a coat out of season. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I just stood there, letting the wind slap my cheeks, cooling a rage that felt like it came with teeth. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind ran in loops. Every late-night drive, every last-minute transfer to cover rent, it's just temporary, Mom. She'd built a kingdom on my sacrifices. Now she was passing it off as her own. I turned on my laptop, logged into the tuition portal, hovered my cursor over Remove Payment Method. My hand trembled. Not from fear, from knowing. This was the moment the curtain dropped. This was the moment I stopped being the backdrop. I didn't blink. The morning broke quietly. No birdsong, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the settling house. I sat at the kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of coffee, my laptop open in front of me. The tuition portal blinked at me. Patient and cold, I stared at the button. Remove Payment Method. My finger hovered above it. Not shaking, not uncertain. Just still. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't even anger anymore. It was preservation. Of myself. Of what was left. 10 years. Nearly $85,000. I could tally it like an accountant now. Semester by semester, credit by credit. I remembered saying no to a job offer in Charlotte, too far to commute while Morgan was still in school. I remembered Christmases where I brought pie instead of gifts. The time I skipped a trip to Denver with friends because Morgan needed books for her spring classes. Every time it felt like love. Now it felt like debt. Not the kind you pay back, but the kind that eats at you until there's nothing left but obligation dressed as virtue. I clicked. The ping was soft. But to me, it cracked like glass under a boot heel. There was no cinematic swell, no vindication, just stillness. Like the room had exhaled. Like I waited for regret. It didn't come. Instead, something else filled the space. Clarity. For the first time in years, I felt like I had stepped out of someone else's life and into my own. The phone buzzed once. Then again, I didn't look. The third buzz came with a name. Morgan. I turned the phone face down and carried it to the living room. I sat on the couch, legs tucked under me, silence stretching like smoke through the house. A part of me thought I might break. Another part, older, sharper, knew I wouldn't. 16 years ago, I caught Morgan sneaking out past midnight. She promised it was a one-time thing. I let it slide. That was my first mistake. Now, I wasn't fixing things anymore. By late afternoon, I'd gone through 2 cups of coffee and answered 3 work emails. The phone buzzed again, this time with a new name. Mom. I still didn't answer. I locked up the office before sunset. Savannah Za. Late November air had that almost winter chill, the kind that lingered in your bones longer than you wanted. As I pulled my keys from the lock, the phone lit up again. Voicemail. Mom. I tapped the screen, her voice, sharp and breathless. What did you just do? Work gave me a rhythm, a silence I didn't have to explain. I was on site that morning, walking through units at a small law office we'd contracted, the kind of place where even the carpet had ambition. I checked HVAC specs, updated a few, inspection logs, nodded at men in ties who avoided eye contact. It felt calm, but silence has a weight. And this one pressed differently, like a storm had exhaled but hadn't left. At lunch, sitting in the break room with a ham sandwich I couldn't taste, I opened my phone. Forwarded email, Columbia University. Subject, urgent, enrollment status at risk. Your recent tuition payment has been voided. Your current enrollment is in jeopardy. Payment due in 10 days or withdrawal will be processed. No salutation, no apology. Just bureaucracy in bold font. She hadn't seen it yet, but she would. I stared at the email, reread it, and closed my phone. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. It was the grim satisfaction of an avalanche. Slow to start, unstoppable once it moved. The door slammed open at 3:06 p.m. Every head in the conference room turned. Morgan, hair disheveled, mascara streaked like melting ink. "You ruined my life," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger. "You selfish but—" The room went still. No one moved. Someone's pen dropped. I didn't flinch. She stepped closer. "You think this makes you noble? You think hurting me makes you better?" "Ms. Green," the receptionist's voice cracked over the intercom. "Security's on their way." Morgan didn't hear, or didn't care. "I trusted you. You're my mother." That word, my mother, burned. She'd only remembered it when it served her. "Darlene," my manager whispered. I nodded. Slowly. Security arrived. 2 men in khakis and polos. They didn't touch her, just talked, calm and practiced. It took 5 minutes. She was still shouting when they walked her out, her voice echoing off glass and drywall. "I'm nothing without that school. You've ruined everything." And then, silence again. No one spoke. When I stood, they parted for me like I'd become something else entirely. Someone dangerous, or someone free. Back at my desk, I logged out of every open tab and gathered my things. I could feel eyes watching, but no one dared speak. By 5, I was home. I poured tea instead of wine. A voicemail waited. Mom's voice. Strained, hissing through clenched teeth. "Morgan is humiliated. She says you destroyed her." I played it twice. Then I deleted it. New notification popped up. Columbia University again. This time from financial aid. At work, the silence wasn't kind. It was clinical. A nod from Janine by the copier. A glance from Terry that didn't linger. I felt the ripples of yesterday still echoing through the halls. The meltdown Morgan delivered had a shelf life longer than she'd imagined. When I got home, the air felt heavy. 3 voicemails weighted like stones in my chest. All from Mom. I didn't play them. I didn't need to. I already knew the lines. "What have you done?" Morgan's fragile. "This isn't who you are." Then came the 4th call. I answered. There was silence. First, the kind that crawls under your skin. Then her voice, soft but sharpened like a pin. "You've changed, Donna." I didn't say anything. "She's falling apart. She's not sleeping. She's humiliated. Do you know what people are saying?" Still, I waited. "She needed your help," she said, voice tightening. "But you made a spectacle. In front of her peers. In front of your colleagues. That's not like you." And there it was. The weight of it. That accusation pretending to be concern. Guilt packaged in lace. I inhaled. "No," I said slowly. "You're right. It's not like me. Not the version of me who swallowed things whole so no one else had to taste discomfort." She stammered. "I paid $85,000 so my sister could post about being a senator's daughter," I continued. "I watched her lie, cheat, scream in public, and you're worried I embarrassed her?" She said my name again, smaller now. "I didn't change," I said. "I just stopped playing dead." Silence again. But this time, it was mine. When the call ended, I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The face was familiar, but the fire behind my eyes wasn't. "Good," I whispered. There was grief, yes. But it came layered with clarity. A loss, but not a mistake. I poured bourbon. One finger, neat. I raised it to the empty kitchen. To the truth. My phone buzzed again. A text. Not Mom. Not Morgan. A name I hadn't seen in years. "Heard what happened at your office. You free to talk? My thumb hovered. Scrolling was my lullaby lately. Soothing, numbing, empty. That night was no different, until Morgan's post lit up my feed like a match in gasoline. Family betrayal, survival, and strength. A black and white photo of her looking pained, captioned, with poetic vagueness. A carefully crafted piece of fiction. She'd framed herself as the wounded phoenix rising from the ashes of familial cruelty. At first, the comments wrapped her in praise. You're so brave. People don't understand how strong you have to be. But then, like a blade through chiffon, Mason's mother wrote, "Didn't you say your parents paid for Columbia?" Another voice chimed in. "Wait, didn't you say you were raised in D.C.? Then, I remember Darlene. She used to pick you up from debate team." And just like that, the thread frayed. She deleted the post, but not before it was screenshotted, not before it was shared. I didn't smile. I didn't even blink. The damage was already done. At noon the next day, Madison texted me. "You need to come. She's meeting Mason at Creek Cafe." I didn't. But I knew someone who worked there. Later, I heard every detail. Morgan was already at the table, face drawn, sunglasses pushed onto her head like a crown slipping off. Mason came in 10 minutes, late. He didn't sit right away. She reached for his hand. He pulled away. I was going to explain everything. "You should have led with the truth," he said. Her voice cracked. "It's complicated." He didn't blink. "You told me you were raised on the Hill, daughter of a federal lawyer. Is your sister even in law?" She's just bitter." His voice was calm, sharper for it. "If you're ashamed of her, you'll be ashamed of me. Someday." He stood. She reached for his arm, tears now streaking the mask of foundation on her cheeks. "Mason, please, don't let her ruin this." But he was already gone. People turned their heads. Her sobs were uncontained, raw, unedited. No caption could fix that. Back home, my phone buzzed. A text from Morgan. "Why did you let him believe that?" I didn't reply. I walked through the Pearl District, past the art stores and the antique shops and the dripping gutters. The rain kissed my hairline, trailed down my collar. It felt honest. When I got home, a new email sat waiting. Subject, final tuition notice, payment void, withdrawal imminent, and below it, one unread message, from Mason. Subject, you were always the better sister. The receptionist's voice crackled through the speaker. There's a Morgan here to see you. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I closed the HVAC spreadsheet and rose, smoothing the creases of my shirt. I'd built these walls myself, brick by brick. Let her try to scratch through. She was standing just beyond the glass doors, hair tangled, jacket slipping off one shoulder, mascara running down her face like ink on rain-soaked paper. You don't understand what you've done, she started, loud enough for the room to hear. I'm being kicked out. I have nowhere. You had places, I interrupted, quiet, but steel. You just burned them. Her hands trembled around her phone. You could fix this. I shook my head. No, you don't want it fixed. You want control. Security was already moving down the hall. One of the interns had called them, eyes wide, whispering. Morgan saw them and lunged a step forward. I'm your sister, and I was yours, I said. They reached her. She didn't scream this time, just stared, stunned, as if the silence was louder than all her protests ever were. I didn't watch her go. I turned and walked back to my office. That night, I blocked every number tied to the family name. Morgan, Mom, even Aunt Shelley, who always meant well, but never really knew how to stay out of the mess. One by one, I deleted voicemails. I let moms play once, though. You've abandoned us. You've turned cold. This isn't who you are. But it was. Maybe for the first time. I sat down, wrote a single message to my aunt. This isn't punishment. It's preservation. I'm trying to stay alive in a life I've given away too many times. I hit send. Then I deleted that thread too. Outside, the rain tapped the windows like a lullaby with claws. I wrapped myself in a knit blanket and stared out at the gray glow that hung over Portland like unfinished business. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for an apology. Not for understanding. I opened my journal and wrote, I chose myself. Not to hurt them, but to finally see me. And for the first time in years, the page didn't feel like a scream. Just before midnight, something slid through the mail slot. A simple cream envelope. No return address. I opened it. A single card. Handwritten. Saw what you did. You're stronger than any of them know. I stared at the signature, Evelyn. The envelope was heavier than it looked. Pale ivory, clean lines, the seal from my lawyer's office like a final stamp in a long, grueling journey. I stood by the kitchen counter as I slid my finger under the flap. Final custody ruling. Full. Parental rights awarded to Darlene James. No shared weekends. No supervised visits. No second guessing. I exhaled. Not in triumph, but with a heaviness that rolled out of my lungs like dust from a closed room. It's over, I whispered, though no one was there to hear. The house was quiet. Too quiet, I passed the playroom. Her dolls were still, lined up from our last tea party. One had a ribbon sliding off its head like a slumped crown. Upstairs, my daughter slept in the soft rhythm only children know after a hard day. I made tea I didn't really want, sat at the dining table that used to seat more, and let the silence speak. This wasn't victory. It was survival. It had cost me more than I knew I had to give. 16 years ago. Morgan held her in the hospital room, pink bundle wrapped tight. Her voice cracked. Don't make me disappear from her life. I didn't say anything. Didn't nod. Didn't promise. Silence can protect you. But sometimes, it's what leaves the deepest scar. Tonight, I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Drafts. Unsent letters lined the screen like ghosts. Mom, you hurt me in ways I couldn't name at the time. Morgan, I never wanted to be your villain. Everyone, I was never the problem. I was the plaster holding your walls together. One by one, I deleted them. Not in rage. Not in revenge. Just release. Then I wrote a single line on a blank page. This is the life I saved myself to live. I meant it. At 9:46 p.m., I turned off the lights, checked the locks. When I twisted the bolt on the front door, there was a knock. Froze. No footsteps. No voice. Just an envelope slipped beneath the door. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Me, sitting by the river a week ago. Hair pulled back, coffee cup in hand. Eyes soft but alert. Taken from a distance. A note was, scrawled across the bottom, I saw what you did. You're stronger than any of them know. Sometimes the hardest door to close is the one that leads to people you once loved. But choosing peace isn't abandonment. It's survival. I spent years mistaking silence for strength, loyalty for love, and sacrifice for connection. It took losing everything familiar to finally find myself. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Boundaries aren't walls. They're windows that let in light, not just for you, but for those brave enough to walk toward it. You can choose yourself and still be kind. You can protect your soul without proving your pain. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought you couldn't live without? What gave you the strength? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story touched something in you, comment 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, tell me why. Your perspective matters too. And if you'd like to follow more stories that dive deep into real emotion, personal power, and the quiet victories we often overlook, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more voices like mine to light.